it's important we are innovators, we are pioneers, we do need that space. And the 1-3, so right now, over the last 6 years, I walked away from education, I had a spiritual awakening, I actually gave away all my possessions and just started to follow my intuition. So I had a big pull from a 1 line, from being at the top of my game to suddenly having to start, well, seemingly not true, but seemingly start again building human design knowledge, building gene keys knowledge, building energetics, co-creation, metaphysics, and so, but now it's like after 6 years, I see, and building a business and copy and content and going and seeing how actually this was all relevant to the higher purpose and the Dharma path. But so that leads me on to saying that the one line and perhaps the 1-3 needs patience to build their expertise and build. And I think it's really important to say as well, when we're not in an aligned situation, so teaching was aligned, but having to live with somebody else's deadlines and timeline and goals and this and that was very misaligned. So after 7 years in mainstream education, that's when I had to leave. And obviously being a projector and open sacral, and there's all these other things to do with it. But what was unbalanced was, for me at that time, was this, because of the deep fear and insecurity of perhaps not knowing, we see a shadow side of the 1 line who can have imposter syndrome. And what that led me to do was work 100-hour weeks to prove my worth, to make sure I knew, and constant curriculum changes, different assessments, new governments, new policies, and having to learn all the time. That even though teaching I was fantastic and passionate and mastered pedagogy and created my own thing, if you're not in alignment with the rest of your design and living being able to work in a job in a way that you can express your expertise and your knowledge in a more aligned way for you, this is why I help people to come out of force and into flow, and how to restructure their lives or their businesses so that they can move out of the hustle and into how could we live in our profile and embody that and be highly paid and enjoy life in a way that is in alignment for us. Because with the unbalanced expression of that 1 line, they will over prepare, they will perhaps postpone. Like so many times I've postponed opportunities. I didn't know enough about human design. I know fucking so much about human design. I could transform lives in that time, but until the 1 line feels it, and they will postpone. So look at the shadow, look at that, where that might be holding you back. And I want to give a gem here and a nugget, that one of the things I've found about living in alignment and being an aligned and optimally balanced 1 line is that now all I need to do is program my subconscious and say, I choose the end result of producing a series on profiles, and suddenly, and when I release that, the information just flows to me. Or I might get an intuitive idea to look into something, and suddenly I get a call that says, hey, can I book in for this specific, unique bit of information, niche? I was just studying that. So as you become aligned,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And so you check yourself as the 1-3.
Sure.
Where are you ever? Yeah.
So kind of like setting your own curriculum, like, okay, this is the next thing I want to learn about. And suddenly you're attracting to you experiences that either help you show yourself what you already know about it, like client asking you for a session. Because obviously if someone's inviting you, especially as a projector, if someone's inviting you for your opinion, somewhere they got the impression you would have a good answer for that if you're a line 1, for sure. So then I just love that. I'm like giggling because I'm like, what a great, so the universe either brings you an opportunity to show yourself what you already know, kind of like a semester test or like a report, right? You're now sharing, or gives you a class or an opportunity to pick up some new information that you need to know to be a master, an expert in that particular question.
That happens too, or it just drops what you need. So when I was, do you remember when I was creating the Know Your Ideal Client? So I got the insight to do the Know Your Ideal Client, and then suddenly I was doing selling from the centers, and suddenly I built the whole fractal formula, the fractal content framework formula. So that's on the back burner, but it all came because I was doing that, and suddenly all the information and all these insights and downloads and So that's an aligned one line. And I will say, even before today's podcast, I found myself doing my shadow, which is this. I was like writing these, I was like, okay, I need
I
to just
love it. Thank you
write
for
everything I know about being a 1-3. And I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, I don't really know. And so it doesn't need to be like that. You can ground and you can just show up
yeah.
and know what you need to know. And so, yeah, just be
Wait a
aware.
minute though, but I do believe because even just with my son, like it does help to reduce the anxiety about something, to make those little sticky notes or the cards of just getting out of your head and onto paper in a concrete fashion.
Yeah.
What do I already know about this? And that, I guess that's a tip I would give any person, any parent out there. If you're listening to this and you homeschool, or you listen to this podcast and your kids go to public school, it doesn't matter. One of the best things you can do to support a 1-3 child with their homework is to say, tell me what you already know about this question. Before you try helping them solve it, help them really lean into that line one. I know a lot actually about the subject of quantum physics, or about the subject of pangolins, and get a good grasp for what they already know, rather than rushing into solution, or help them figure out the process. The process isn't always the problem with a one line. Sometimes the problem is actually a lack of confidence that I do have the resources to answer this question effectively. And like you said, so sometimes that's the only thing I do for my son to help him get to the point where he can say, yes, I can answer this question, is just go, tell me what you already know about it. Teach me, because I haven't been studying this with you.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, the more he shares, the more he's like, oh, I've got this. I totally got this.
Really important and powerful takeaway for anyone, any parent or any teacher watching that. Like, ask them the questions, and because when they start to see the evidence and start to talk on it, and they see that they know a lot, that confidence skyrockets. And actually, I wrote down here one of the things that I used to do as a practitioner when I was teaching, and I think that we should all be doing this. It doesn't matter whether you're one line or not. We all learn better when we teach. So getting a one-line child to teach part of a lesson, or research and teach part of a lesson or part of an idea, is really powerful as well. Because
yes.
Yeah. But just finally, in terms of like marketing, you understanding your role, understanding the characteristics and how to position yourself and really lean into that is helpful. Understanding yourself as a 1-3, the type of content that you create. So you could be creating case studies. You could be creating, showing like how you've experimented. And again, it's going to how we really give you a unique marketing blueprint we're going to take into account your throat activations. We're going to take into account your whole chart, and certain activations. And that's going to tell us whether you are very, very adept at storytelling, or that you should really leverage this or that. So, but the point is, you can learn a huge amount about your role, about the impact you're here to have, about how you can show up and position yourself in a way that is magnetic, and starts to just bring your people to you.
It's so beautiful. Okay, if you have time for one more question, I have one more question about, and it's interesting because you're a 1-3 splenic projector. My son is a 1-3 pure generator, but he has a lot of definition in the spleen. And when you were talking about that imposter syndrome, I didn't realize that was pretty common with line ones, but I knew it was part of some of the spleen definition. Anyway, the question is, if we had a time machine and you could go back and tell your parents like one thing about your design as a 1-3 splenic projector, or just as a 1-3 in general, what would you? Yeah, again, this is kind of it's again about how to support the 1-3. But I wonder what you would say. What's the most important thing that maybe they could have done differently, or celebrating what they did well, but didn't realize it was didn't know human design. They just did it, and it worked really good. I don't know. What do you think?
What's really interesting, I'm going to answer the question, but I think what's just dropped into my mind is that I actually want to invert it and say, how can we help the parent with the 1-3? Because
there you go.
That parent may feel like they want to wrap that child in cotton wool and try and protect them for every eventual outcome. And the child is going to make mistakes. They have to go into the fire. Like, you cannot tell a 1-3, oh, there's fire, don't touch the cooker. The 1-3 has to put their hand on it and get that burn and go, oh, okay. It's the way that we learn. So the poor parent, that's number one. Like, can you find your peace in allowing your child to make mistakes and being there as a somebody who can not judge them and just be a piece for them, someone who they can come back to and say, I really messed this up, and but this is what I've learned, and allow them to reduce the shame, because there's a lot of shame for a third line, and to increase their resilience, because the third line is, and that's where the poor old 6 line, they go through all this experimentation, but they don't have the same bounce back that third line does, because the quality, the attribute of that third line is, painful, but what? How can we make this better? Or what? Because they're here to adapt. It's built into us. We're really, really resilient. So, what did my mum do really, really well? Or what could you do well? She got me the best education that she could. So I had really high quality education, and she did nurture my curiosity. So there was a lot of freedom to make mistakes, to go my own way. I left home at 17. There was a lot of allowing me to find my own way, and that stood me in good stead, really. And
yes, I'm glad you mentioned that about parents too, because there is a certain amount of self-regulation that happens in order to allow a line 3 to really experiment with their life, and I'm just speaking again from experience, but it's heartbreaking to, especially for projector moms. I'm going to speak to projector moms, especially because you can kind of see that decision isn't going to work out well from like before they even really formulated the commitment to the decision, right? You're projecting into, you can see the system, you can see the A plus B equals C, and you don't like C. And so it is really tempting to say, insert influence and say, no, I don't, what if we tried this instead? But at a certain point, the reality of learning the lesson from the experiment, and I say that loosely, the choices, right? But the line 3 is experimenting with life choices, and the reality is they can't really internalize the lesson if the decision itself wasn't theirs. It's not their experiment, then it's your experiment. And if your experiment is confirmation bias, like I already know this is going to work out, so do it my way, then they're not learning anything, and you're not actually teaching anything. You're just confirming a bias you already had about that decision, which may be grounded in a lot of experiential wisdom. Don't get me wrong. But the fact of the matter is it's nearly impossible for the child to internalize the lesson from your wisdom that you've acquired through your hard choices in life. There's just no way. And it is hard though, because we love them. We want to protect them. We really just want them to have a better life than we had, And I think that's natural for parents, but it's hard, especially as they get, a little more independence because of that age, moving into the teenage years and really being able to make decisions away from you without your counsel at all, and come back and say, hey, I messed up while I was out with my friends, and this is what I did. And we have to make a decision, really. Do we want to be right at that point, or do we want to be the person that they can feel comfortable talking to, so you can know what's going on? It's hard. But anyway, we could do a whole series about teenagers too, I suppose. But I appreciate you saying that too. And when I don't ask that question to like put down parents, I just think, wow, there's things that like, there's some things that as a child, I spent lots of time alone, and my brother and I are both non-sacral beings. He's a manifestor and I'm a projector, and I used to really resent the sheer volume of hours we spent as latchkey kids. But now that I know my design, it actually was really in both of our best interests. My mom was a manifesting generator, and she passed away a few years ago, so got many blessings on her memory. But like I remember being resentful as a child about that, and how I felt so burdened by being responsible for this little brother. But now I'm like, that probably was the best thing for both of our energy fields to help us really get in touch with who we are as non-sacral beings, because we were being conditioned by the, being around generators all day in the school system. So we'd come home and have like 3 or 4 hours where we weren't being pushed to do something and we could just follow our fancies. So
Nice. I think on a final note as well, in terms of like, that was a positive thing with, like education, curiosity, for giving the freedom to learn. I think the worst thing that you can do, and some of this was the case with my poor old mum. She's here. She's not in the room, but it's creating like just around silly little things like making some food, and you want to experiment with new flavors, and then she'll be like, oh no, don't do that, or oh, that was the worst piece of salmon that you ever made, or whatever. You start to fear, you do get, if they're really controlling about how something should be done, it starts to stifle the creativity and you start to fear getting it wrong. And so try not to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a look at that, because I do think, he's a firstborn son, so I'll take a look at that. Thank you for mentioning that. I don't know that, I feel like I've gotten better with it, but there's always room for improvement. And then maybe that's the real reason why he didn't try a little harder at that test. Maybe he was afraid of getting the answers wrong. And so there might be something to that, since I shared that story already. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So tell us how people can find you if they want to learn more or get to a reading with you. I know you're doing readings for people.
At the moment, there's multiple offers that I do and ways that I work with people. I have the HD Business Blueprint, which is about building your business in alignment with your design. I do one-to-one mentorship on actually just aligning with your design and stepping into your power and your soul destiny pathway and moving out of force into flow, really working with co-creation and how you create using your design. But based on the series that we're doing, I would love for as many of you to book in for how to embody and leverage your profile in either business, marketing, or life. So we get a 60-minute session. They're £333. You can book in via my DM on the HD Business Blueprint on Instagram, or you can just find me on Facebook, Jessica Ann, add my profile and reach out via Messenger. A lot of my work, a lot of my sales is through the DMs, through conversations, people reaching out from YouTube. So however you want to find me, the key place is the HD Business Blueprint or Jessica Ann, and you can probably find me through Sashya if people do that for you on Facebook. And book in for a specific around profile, because what I find is that people learn a lot of information, but they don't then zoom in and do the application and the embodiment work. If you focus on profile and really zoom in, you get some self-inquiry questions, you get practical ways of working with it and experimenting with it in your marketing, in your content, in your life, in your relationships, in your learning. It's very, very powerful to have that focus. And guess what, by the way, gate 9 is my Jupiter, which is where focus goes and flows. And so a lot of what I get to give people is the ability to focus and zoom in on what's important and then apply that and have transformation in a very real way. So I'm really excited about focusing on the profiles and doing those readings, but there's many ways you can work with me.
That's wonderful. And I will make sure and put all that in the show notes on the podcast and also in the notes on the YouTube channel. That sounds great. And then for any parents listening, I right now, the best foundational place to start, especially if you're a 1-3 parent or have a 1-3 child, is I have a course called Understanding Your Child's Human Design. It's a audio course. It's self-paced because we don't all integrate information at the same speed. And I'm available for lots of questions inside that course. But it's basically an email course. It's $44. It's like one of the best investments you can make in your relationship with your child. And it's on my website, www.sashyaclark.com. And I'm so glad that we're starting the series together. I think our next episode is going to be about the 6-2, just because I'm a 6-2, and then we'll kind of branch out into the other profiles, and this is going to be so fun. I'm so excited. Yeah, like you said, I think sometimes we get kind of lost in the weeds of human design and forget to really dive into those fundamentals. The sun placement in our chart is like 70% of our energy, and profiles dictated off of the sun placement. So like, this is really kind of where the rubber hits the road for a lot of people, but we overlook it because it's just one little blip on this whole page of lots of numbers and colors and lines and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. I think it'll be really, I hope it's helpful to those that are listening. And I just think it's beautiful information. And it's always so fun to get my inner nerd out and play with you. I love talking human design with you. It's so fun.